Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here with my quick thoughts after having just watched the latest episode of Star Trek Picard, Nepenthe. My initial thoughts will be spoiler free, so if you haven't seen the episode, feel free to stick around. I will give you a warning once I launch into spoilers. So for me, with this episode, I'm finding that a lot of the storylines so far in Picard are coming to a head. I'm mostly enjoying where things are going. A few things that I'm not liking as much, but we'll get into that on the other side of the spoiler warning. First of all, this episode was filled with a lot of heart, and I found myself getting teary very early on in the episode and kind of sustaining that feeling throughout. And not even for sad reasons. Star Trek has been a part of my life for many years, and I've grown up with and loved these characters. So to see their stories continue and the effects they're having on each other's lives here made me very emotional. And it honestly came as a surprise to me. I was not expecting to get this emotional, but this episode definitely affected me in some very deep ways. In a lot of ways, parts of this episode feel like a bit of a rest stop for Picard. We've had a lot of high action up until this point, and I think from this point forward the season will feature a lot of high action through the conclusion, but this almost feels like just a bit of a pause to catch our breaths, which is very welcome at this point. For Picard anyway. There are other characters that are going through some things that are very much not a pause for breath, but for Picard in particular, this really felt like just a little bit of a peaceful stop for him, which was really nice. So all in all, I would say this was an excellent episode. I think I'm saying this a lot with new episodes that come along. This has been one of my favorite outings for this series, despite some things in it that I will talk about that I didn't like so much, but we'll go from there. I definitely enjoyed this episode. The acting by some of the people who show up in this episode who we haven't seen so far is excellent, and it was really a joy to see some of these characters on screen. Okay, from here on out, I'm going to be going into spoilers for this episode, so if you haven't watched it, I would suggest clicking away now, because man oh man, does some stuff happen in this episode. So the main part of the episode for Picard is that he and Soji have traveled through the trajector to the planet Nepenthe, where a couple of old friends have taken up residence, Will Riker and Deanna Troi, along with their daughter Kestra. This is where I immediately started to get a little emotional. Picard meeting Deanna again for the first time in a long time, and then of course his reunion with Riker. Both of these got me a little emotional. I'm not too proud to admit. So yeah, no, it was excellent. It was really great to see. We learn a lot about Riker and Troy's lives ever since the Next Generation. They apparently had a son as well who passed away at an early age, very tragically from a sickness, and a younger daughter, Kestra, who has had to deal with the loss of a brother. So there's a lot of trauma being explored in this episode, and a lot of that is very helpful to Soji as she's kind of working through her trauma after having been brutally betrayed by Narek in the last episode. I'm really enjoying Soji's journey here as she doesn't immediately trust Picard. She is given more agency here. She trusted too quickly with Narek and has discovered how that can hurt her. So she's being a lot more careful here. And it's really good to see that, you know, she's not just liking Picard because he's Picard. We know and love him. We, of course, are going to trust him. She is going to take a little bit more time to get on his side. And I really like that journey, and the relationship that she strikes up with Kestra is a big part of that journey. So speaking of Narek, he is hot on the tail of the La Sirena and Picard's motley crew as they attempt to escape the Borg cube. I should also say that Elnor has elected to remain behind on the cube to aid Hugh in his struggle against the Zhat Vash aboard the cube. We'll get a little bit more into that story in a moment, but first of all, Rios and Girardi and Rafi are all aboard the ship trying to get away. They are being tracked, however. We learn through a flashback from some sort of chemical that Girardi has taken into her body, given to her by Commodore O. We see a flashback to that scene where Commodore O apparently mind melded with Jurati and showed her what would happen if the synths were allowed to continue, which is why she killed Maddox in a previous episode. Jurati is coming apart at the seams in this episode, and Alison Pill plays it brilliantly. I had really hoped to really like her character when it was announced that she was going to be on the show. Of course, now she's kind of a bit of a villain, but also a victim of everything that's going on here as well. She's definitely dealing with a lot in her struggle with what she has done and what she believes is right because of what she's seen of the future. So it's difficult to see her deal with this, but Alison Pill does an amazing job. There's some great scenes between her and Rafi in particular. And I also have to give a shout out to Captain Rios, who at various times suspects both Rafi and Jurati of being the mole that is enabling Narek to chase them down. At the end of the episode, Dr. Jurati sacrifices herself seemingly by injecting some sort of compound into her system. My guess is this compound is negating whatever tracking compound is in her body, and there's some sort of chemical reaction there. The side effect, of course, is also that it's deadly. She is not apparently dead at the end of the episode, though, but in a coma, according to the EMH. So interested to see if there's maybe some sort of redemption for her. I thought this might have been the end of her character, but it seems there is a bit more with her to go in the future. So back aboard the Borg cube, Elnor is assisting Hugh. Hugh is such a good character. And I have to say, this part of the episode really bugged me. And again, like, I can't believe I'm getting this emotionally worked up over it, but he's just such a good character. The Jadvash have him captured and a number of the XBs, and they just wantonly execute a number of the X-Borg. And of course, Hugh is left to deal with this because he's protected by treaty. They can't touch him, basically. So he vows vengeance. He says he's going to turn the cube against all of the Romulans and get Elnor to help him. And it's at this point, this is the point of Hugh's hubris, which, you know, if you know anything about story structure, means that he's going to have to pay a price, an even bigger price than the one he has already paid to get him to this point. And unfortunately, our favorite Romulan Lannister assassin kills Hugh, and I was really, really, really hoping that Hugh wouldn't die, and unfortunately he has been killed, which is such a frustration because I really wanted this character to go places. Now, I did recently watch an interview with Jonathan Del Arco, conducted by Jordan Hoffman on the Star Trek cruise, and he does assure us that his death will serve a purpose and that what happens from here forward, it was very much in service of the story and very much a necessary thing. But it's still really hard to deal with because, damn it, I was really hoping that character would continue, but unfortunately that is not the case. Elnor, of course, is still aboard the Borg cube, and the last we see of him is he calls the Fenris Rangers for help. So presumably 7 of 9 will show up to his rescue at some point in the next episode or two. So anyway, like I said, despite my huge problem with Hugh dying, which, you know, I mean, that they made me care, and then they killed him. Damn it. But yeah, besides that, I loved this episode. It really felt, I don't know if you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, not the films, but the books, when the hobbits come to the home of Tom Bombadil, and it's just this beautiful rest where they collect themselves and recharge themselves and get ready for the trials that await them. This is what this felt like for Picard and Soji. They came to this wonderful place with friends and open arms and this warm, welcoming environment to rest up for what's to come, which probably means what's to come is pretty brutal. So Ah, man, I can't believe there are only 3 episodes left after this, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what the show has for us in store from here. But I want to hear from you guys. What did you think of the episode Nepenthe? What do you think is going to be happening in the next 3 episodes? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you to the Patreon supporters for helping bring this episode to you. If you feel like helping out the channel, patreon.com/Kertrats is where you go for that. But thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, live long and prosper.